Hey, what's up, everyone? Here with John Martinez.
Hey, what's going on, Greg? How you doing, my man?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. It's 8 in the morning, and I'm sitting here chatting with you. So
Cool.
perfect day.
Well, hey, let's set up this video. Uh, just to zoom out and set this up, I do the REI Sales Academy. Greg's been with me for shoot, man. When did you start the REI Sales Academy training?
It's a long time ago now. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago. Almost 3 years ago. Yeah.
So Greg's obviously been in the REI Sales Academy, does a lot of our high-end one-on-one training now. So he's like a Jedi master with buying houses at discount. And anyways, what we're here to talk about is kind of the model Greg uses, where he's placed our training. So he uses our process, but buys mostly virtually now. Has purchased a lot belly to belly, made a transition virtual. So what I want to talk about on this video is just real laid back chat about, hey, when buying over the phone, what's different between that and buying face to face? Are there any unique challenges? Just what to expect, what to be prepared for, where are some pitfalls, where do things fall through? And just we'll look at that conversation through the lens of the sales training we do at the REI Sales Academy. So you cool with that, Greg?
Absolutely. It sounds good. I think this is a good thing to chat about because this is something that, a lot of people are curious about, but they really probably never heard an actual like nuts and bolts, like, hey, this is exactly what you should do to do it successfully.
Well, cool. Well, let's start big picture. In your opinion, when does it make sense to have a virtual model? Is it anyone, anywhere? Does it have to do with marketing? Does it have to do where you're physically located? Like just from your opinion, you've been through this, you made the decisions. When does buying over the phone make sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on a lot of people, really their situation. So some people will say, I don't like my market, it's too competitive. I don't like my market, the margins aren't high enough. So whenever you feel like your market, usually it starts with your market. If you don't like your own market that you physically live in, if you're like, hey, it's too competitive or it's too, I guess non-competitive, the margins aren't there. I think that's really where a lot of people look to go into other markets. Or I have a good friend who actually doesn't even live in the US. He lives up in Canada. So for him, obviously, I think you know who we're talking about. He has to, buy virtually unless he wants to buy in Canada. So really it has to do with where you're at, whether the market's too competitive, whether you don't think your market's good enough. That's probably where I would start. And then it also has to do with kind of another point I would share is kind of lifestyle. Some people, they don't want to be physically attached to a market where they have to, go to title companies or go to lawyers' offices or go to seller appointments, and they want to buy virtually so then they can always be on the go. So whether they're traveling in Europe or whether they're, in their own markets, they don't have to physically go to those properties and do business. They almost have an internet real estate business, which they actually do.
I'll tag on to that. The other place I see people buying virtually is when they get really good at the lead gen. And even so we've got a handful of clients who buy virtually in their own market, even if the house is like next door. They're producing so many leads that they're like, we got to churn through these leads, and I got to call them, or else the choice becomes I got to hire this monster sales force of acquisition agents to go and work all these leads, or we got to just start buying over the phone. And we'll use a condensed team of highly trained individuals to just try to buy everything over the phone, whether it is in our market or some other market.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. I actually just did that on a deal. I was in New York and I never met the seller.
Cool.
And the house, I never.
Once you have the skill set, you have the skill set.
Exactly. It's like learning how to ride a bike. Once you figure it out and you see proof of concept, you're like, oh my God, because I think another thing, I don't want to get all woo-woo here, but people, it's like a limiting belief. Oh, you got to go belly to belly. You got to go there. I'll be completely honest. I haven't been in this business for 10 years. I haven't done thousands of deals, but from my experience, I think the best deals I've ever bought were either mostly over the phone, or I got 85% of the stuff done over the phone and I just went there to verify the property. So I think that's a big myth that oh, you have to go there and physically go to every appointment. If you want to do that, yeah, you're probably going to have a better closing rate. But I really think that if you're having the right conversation, whether you're on the phone, on the moon, or in person, it doesn't really matter.
Cool, what do you? No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. It can be done. I think a lot of people just don't do it because they can't get their heads wrapped around it. So let's transition the conversation into that piece of it, which is, let's talk about number one. What's just plain different? What is different when buying over the phone versus face to face? We obviously use the same sales process because we've trained together. But with the sales process we teach, what's different, man?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are different. The first one is I think the biggest thing that people think about, and you will sometimes see this with sellers, is, well, how can you make an offer on my house if you've never seen it, right? So people, they think that because they have not physically seen the house, they can't make an intelligent offer on the property. So that's the first thing, and we can unpack that. The second thing I think with buying over the phone is that that's different is that when you're in a face-to-face meeting, it's a lot easier to see body language and people's feet and their hands and stuff. So when you're on the phone, you have to almost kind of assume how they're behaving because you can't actually see them. So I would say that the physical interaction, the body language, and then people thinking that, oh, well, you've never seen my house, or I've never seen their house. How am I supposed to buy it? So they think like they're going to screw the repairs up, or they're going to screw up like the offer for some reason. And that's just completely not true, because I think if people have been doing this business for more than, a couple months, they can figure out how to properly, manage what's going to cost to repair a property. And then also something I want to kind of just hit on is that, like, I always say this one line and it works every single time. I don't think I've ever not had this work. I say, Mr. Seller, out of the respect of your time, I think it's going to make the most sense if we can get most of this conversation done over the phone. And at the end of this conversation, if it makes sense at that point, I can send someone on my team out to the property to just double check everything we talked about, and then we can move forward. So you always want to show the seller, like, listen, we could go to your house right now. We could meet for 30 minutes and it could be a complete waste of time. Or I could respect your time. We can both just use our time efficiently on the phone. We can have a conversation. We can see if it's a fit. If there's something there, I can set someone up. I can set an appointment up for someone on my team to meet you. If it's not a fit, we didn't go to the house. We didn't waste our time. We can both move on with our days and go from there. And sellers like that a lot because you're respecting their time and you're looking out for their best interests. So I use that line literally every day of the week, and it only works every time.
It only works every time. Well, I think that's a big thing you hit on right there, because that's what I hear when people ask about buying over the phone. Well, what do you say when they ask about how you even come up with the offer? So cool. So I think you nailed that. You had made a second point about reading body language, basically, and getting that gut feel. So you said, I can't remember exact words, but you said you kind of got to just imagine what they're doing. So will you touch on that for a second? How do you bridge that gap? Is it just something where you go, I just don't see it, so I can't work with that stuff? Or are you listening for anything specific? What are you doing?
Yeah, so if I can't, if I'm in a face-to-face meeting with someone, I can kind of size them up real quick and kind of see what they're feeling, But if I'm on the phone with them, obviously you can't do that. So what I like to do is I like to have to double down on me listening to their voice. So I look for, what are they saying that I keep hearing over and over again? A lot of the times it's like they're saying a few selective words, or they're bringing up a certain situation over and over and over again. And to me, that's like my cue as a salesperson or a business owner to drill down on that. Like, hey, Stacy, you mentioned, you're tired of this 3 times now. What's the biggest thing that you're tired about? So you have to kind of supplement, the lack of body language because you're not on the, physically in person. And you have to double down on your listening skills on the phone, because especially when you're talking with a seller who you can actually help, they're going to be doing 75 to 80% of the talking, hopefully. Because then you're going to be taking that, 25 to 20%, and you're going to be, just kind of crafting that sales conversation around what they're saying.
Cool. So you're saying if you're buying over the phone, don't have your freaking email open. You're probably focused.
No, usually if I'm in my home office, my phone's here just because I got up a little late today, but my phone, usually I do my calls over the computer. The only thing I care about is that conversation I'm having. That's the only thing that matters, right? You got to imagine that there's 20 grand on the other side of the phone, because usually there is. And when you can do that, you're like, oh, I should pay attention to this call,
Cool. So those are the 2 biggest differences. What would you say is, and it might be one of the 2 things you mentioned there, but what's the biggest challenge for you when you made that transition? Maybe it's not even a challenge anymore, but when you transitioned from, all right, I'm not going belly to belly anymore, I'm buying over phone, What was the biggest hurdle you ran into?
Good question. So basically, my big issue that I had was, and this was in another market. This wasn't even in my own market. Like I buy a lot in New York and Texas market I was trying to jump into. And I had an issue like, well, if I get a deal, what am I going to do after that? You know? So I actually had a situation where I got a deal, but the lady wanted to meet me in person. And I was not planning on flying to Dallas to sign a contract because that's not a very good use of time.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that if you're buying over the phone, you don't have to have employees. If you want to have a team, you can have a team to do the rest of the process after you get the contract. You got to have someone you can at least partner with, right? And then when there's a situation, because this is another thing with buying a phone, you don't want to be so rigid to where, like, if they're like, hey, listen, can you come to the house and I'll sign the contract? You don't want to be like, no. Like, you got to be somewhat flexible, like within reason. So having somebody, whether it's a partner or a colleague or a team member who's in the area you're doing business in, to just kind of come in and clean the messes up as they get made, that will really help you out. So I got a lady who wanted to sell to me. We had the price figured out, and I was like, I'm not going to meet her there, so I need to call somebody. So I called one of my friends who I've done like 30-something deals with now, and he went there, signed the contract, and we partnered on the deal. So really it was, oh my God, what am I going to do once I have this under contract, especially if it's not the market I know? And the answer to that solution, or the answer to that problem, was just find someone you can partner with, or hire someone down there, or just, kind of team up with somebody. So that was my big issue that I fixed. And now it's cool because I don't see half the houses I buy now. Physically, I still deal with them on the computer, but physically I'm not seeing them.
Well, let me ask you this. So specifically with the sales process, right? Setting the stage, going into the motivation, the deal killers, presenting the offer. What is different when going through our sales process over the phone versus face-to-face?
Oh, nothing. It's the same questions. There's really nothing. I mean, it's the same. You're going to have the same conversation. I take that back. The only thing that's different is that instead of going on the physical tour and walking through the property, you have to ask them about the property, and you're going to just hear the virtual tour. Besides that, it's actually, believe it or not, in my opinion, easier to go through the pain questions and the deal killers, because if you say something and it doesn't come out right, like they're not going to jump through the phone and strangle you, even though they would never strangle you to begin with. But basically, I think it's easier to ask the tough questions because you're on the phone. So it's almost like there's like some layer of comfort there. In person sometimes, and this is with me, I used to get tripped up when I first learned this because I was like, oh my God, if I ask this question, they're going to like look at me funny. So I think it's actually easier to ask the tough questions and go through the deal killers and get the commitments, the yes or the no, on the phone. I just did this actually before I got on this call with you. I made an offer and I gave them the yes or the no decision. So I practice what I preach. And it's easier to do it over the phone, especially when you're starting out, because if you make a mistake, the worst thing they're going to do is hang up the phone and you're going to sound goofy for a minute, and then you'll learn, grow, and be able to do this more effectively as you get on more sales calls. So to answer the questions, really there's nothing different. If I had to pick one thing, it's just going on that tour. And, you're not going to physically walk around the house. You have to say, can you tell me about the property? And then they're going to just describe it over the phone.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I wanted to talk about, because we always I get the same question over and over. So what's different buying it over the phone? Obviously, we can't do the same thing. And I'm like, no, actually, you do the exact same thing. It's the same. This is how people make decisions, right? You want to be motivated to take action. You want to remove any roadblocks that are going to keep them from taking action. You want to present directly to what's important to them. And you want a yes or no commitment, and either one's cool. And that's it. It's like, it's the exact, like, people don't make decisions differently if there's some space between us, right? It's insane.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a mental shift that people just have to get used to. That's the same conversation. I'm glad you said it's easier, because it is. It's like, for the same reason that people can dog you online, right? Because there's that almost anonymity, and there's that barrier in between you. Like, everyone that says all the nasty, mean stuff online, if you met them face to face, I guarantee that 99% of the people wouldn't say the same stuff they do online. So that being said, it might even be worth trying to buy a few deals virtual using the sales process. If you're getting tripped up belly to belly and you're like, it's really uncomfortable for me, you might want to try to buy a couple over the phone and just see if you can get through the process.
Do it in your own market. I mean, it's like, I I moved to San Diego, and I'm going to do some deals out here now. I've made that decision a couple weeks ago, but like I was back in New York for a couple rehab deals, and I got a lead, and I bought it over the phone in New York, and I went to the house after I bought it. Like after we got the price negotiated, I then went there because I was happened to be there. But I was like, and I've never met this guy in person. Like I've never even know what this guy looks like. I don't know him from Adam, and I'm buying his house, and we're closing like next week, and it's like that all was done over the phone, just because I think the big thing with buying over the phone too is to tie into the sales process. The next, like obviously the whole sales process is important, but really getting them to give you commitments regarding the next steps is critical on the phone, because it's easy to flake. It's even easier to flake on the phone because they're not in front of you, right? So you got to make sure that you're getting those advance agreements and you're setting the stage correctly on the phone, because it's even easier to flake over the phone because these people can just hang the phone up and they can do whatever they want. So that's really, really critical for buying over the phone is like, and I'll give you how to say it. Hey, listen, Mr. Seller, I don't know if we'll even get to a deal today. If we do, great. If we don't, no sweat. My question for you is, if we got you a number today that worked, and like I said, that's your decision to make. I mean, would you be even in a position to make a decision today? And you're getting slowly, you're getting to, are they for real? Are they kind of tire kicker? Are they shopping you? So really asking those questions in the beginning, setting that stage is really critical to do over the phone. And it's the same in person. I mean, it's just I think it's even easier to do those things on the phone. Like you said, with the internet trolls, they're probably never going to say that in person, but they'll type all day long on Facebook, Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you just got to be disciplined. You got to be more disciplined with the process.
You got to be disciplined. Yeah. And the thing is, like pretty much all the stuff is controllable. I can control giving someone advance. I can't control buying a real piece of real estate. I can control like the sales process that's going to get me the outcome if that's the case. Like, that I think that's a big shift for me. Like focus on the stuff you have direct control over, and then the rest, it'll take care of itself really. And then you'll learn if you make a mistake.
Yeah. So let's recap the conversation. Almost nothing's different, except sometimes it's a little easier because if you're not face-to-face, you've got that barrier where you can actually go through the sales process. But it's important that you go through the sales process. You got to be a little bit more disciplined because that barrier works the other way too. It's easy for them to flake out, right? For the same reason, it's easier for you to be more disciplined and ask the tough questions and go through the sales process. That also makes it easier for them to flake out. So, so basically, same sales process, zero different, but make sure you're using the sales process. Just be very disciplined, and you should be fine.
Yeah, and understand that it's really the same thing. It's really and it's like. And like you said earlier, a lot of guys that I know, or I see at least, there's so much marketing. And I want to have this. I think we should continue this conversation on this training call because I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. There's so much marketing going out, and there's so many leads coming in. Like I heard you say this one time, and it's like it was like permanently instilled in my brain. Sales is a disqualification process. Like I think the number one thing, I shared this on a video a couple weeks ago in the Facebook group. I said that, and this happened to me, right? Because I'm like a smaller operation. The number one thing, in my opinion, that will burn out a salesperson or a business owner, whether they're a small team or not, quickly, is spending time with the wrong prospects. It doesn't, like, if you don't have a disqualification process, like that's based off of this sales process, not just one that's out of your what. If you spend a lot of time with people who are never going to do business with you, you are going to get so burned out and frustrated, and you're going to try to sell everything to everyone, and then you're going to blame the sales process. So I think getting a solid disqualification process that is set in stone for you to follow is going to create so much more traction, because you're going to have, you're almost going to like, you're going to look to disqualify people who aren't a fit. And then the people who you don't disqualify, you spend the time with them, you have the right conversations with them, you use that 80-20 principle. Right. And you can really make way more money with less stress, less headache, less chaos. And I think a big issue that I had, and I think a lot of people still have, is they try to sell everything to everyone and they get burned out. And they're like, oh my God, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't want to talk to a seller ever again. It's like, dude, you just talked to like 15 unqualified prospects and you tried to sell. You were on the phone for 30 minutes with each prospect. Of course you're burned out. You know what I mean?
Which is another way of saying, be freaking disciplined, right? Because the sales process is, hey, stay a step behind them, right? Use that psychological reactance. You're going to they're going to push themselves to the yes, or you're pulling them all the way to the no. But at the end of that conversation, you should be at one end of that spectrum, right? We're moving forward or we're done, at least for the time being. So it again falls back to discipline, right? Just use the processes there. Use it.
It's funny. I almost get more excited when I disqualify someone than when I do when I get a deal. Because I'm like, yes, it's another person we don't have to waste time with right now. We put them in the follow-up campaign. And you'll be surprised, with a lot of these people, they call in. Like, I think people have the wrong expectations with marketing. That's another thing. That's a whole other conversation. But, like, they might not want to sell right now, but when you put them in the database and follow up with them, you use the sales process and you respect them and you hey, I don't think we're a good fit right now, maybe in the future. That is such a better follow-up conversation because they're like, oh, that guy was cool with me. He never put any pressure on me. He said we weren't a fit right now. We weren't a fit, but now our situation's changed. And the follow-ups are going to be that much better. It's like, oh, it's amazing.
Absolutely, dude. I couldn't agree with you more. So is there anything we missed? Any other piece of this you think we need to hit on for this, for this call?
I think we should just end with an action item instead of I think we talked about pretty much most of the things that people should know about. My action item for people or my challenge, I make these posts on the internet and I always try to put a little challenge at the bottom. And it's just try to buy a house over the phone. Like you don't have to go all in. Like just set a split test. Say, all right, let's say we get 30 leads a week. Okay, let's take 10 out of those 30 and the third of them. And let's try to work those appointments all over the phone and see what the results are, right? Or maybe 15. And just try it out, see the feedback loop, let the feedback loop kick in. And then, I think you'll be surprised on the productivity that this will bring you. Because it's something that I think once you can buy over the phone and you're successful at it, it's a lot easier to scale, right? Because then, I can go into another market, I'm buying over the phone, it's like, you don't need, I just think the whole, I want to hear your opinion. The whole going on a physical appointment is great, especially when they're like an old seller and they can't, whatever. But I just think by the time you drive to a house 40 minutes, especially out in California, the traffic, by the time you drive there, get there, do all this, drive home. It's like you could have talked to like 30 sellers on the phone, or you can meet with one person, at their house. And I just think in terms of being efficient, the phone, especially in 2019, is just as effective, if not sometimes more effective.
Right. The only caveat to that is like, hey, if you're producing one lead a week, you might want to show up, right?
Yeah,
you gotta have everything on your side.
Yeah, one lead a week. You go there and stay there for 5 hours. I mean, geez.
Whatever you got to do, do it.
Yeah, one lead a week. My goodness, you just camp out in their house, sleep on the couch.
Yeah, drive by every day. Well, cool, man. Anything? I think that was the exact same action item I was going to have. Is just
try it.
Do it.
That's it.
I'll add a little bit to that to make it a little bit more effective. Disconnect yourself completely from the results. If you're too results oriented, you're going to push. You're going to try to make things happen just to make them happen. Don't be results oriented. Be process oriented and let the process provide the results. So don't focus on, okay, I'm going to try to buy 10 houses over the phone or one house or my first house over the phone virtually. Focus on, I'm going to hit every point of the sales process over the phone. And then let's see what the data shows, right? Then we'll watch the data and the data will tell us whether this works or not. But it's not going to work if you are results oriented. I mean, if you want results, you got to follow the process, right? That's it. So be results oriented by disconnecting from the results, following the freaking process, be disciplined.
That's it. That's like the, what is that? What's that guy, that college football, Nick Saban, the guy who coaches, he's always like, follow the process, right? Like he makes his team, like they're like the best team. I think it's Alabama. They're like the best team in football, college football. And like, he is obsessed with the process. And it's the same thing in football as it is in sales. It's just, just the
same with everything.
Yeah.
It's you just follow the process.
Follow the process. That's it. Even with even it doesn't even have to be like, it's anything like rehabbing a property. Like, oh, I just want it to look nice. What? You got to go through the line items and step by step go through. Like I just did a house. It's like, if I just wanted the house to look nice, I would have looked like crap, but I just kept the floors, that process day by day, contractor, plumber, and voila, we got a nice house now. So same thing, follow the process, try it out. I think you'll be surprised.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you hopping on and working through this.
No problem. All right, John. Well, thanks for having me on here. I hope I helped some people today.
Yeah.